Ambassador Elena Vasquez watched with growing unease as the Cathara cubs gathered around the holographic display, their golden eyes gleaming with an intensity that seemed far too mature for their young faces. Each cub stood nearly as tall as her waist, their sleek predatory forms rippling with barely contained energy. Their parents, the adult Cathara warriors, observed from the shadows with what she had learned to recognize as amused tolerance. "Explain this chess again, Ambassador," chirped Zektar, the eldest of the cubs. His voice carried the characteristic clicking undertones of his species, but his standard was remarkably fluent for someone barely past their third molting season. Elena smiled, activating the holographic chessboard between them. "Chess is an ancient human strategy game. Two armies face each other, and the goal is to capture the enemy king while protecting your own. Each piece moves in specific patterns, and victory requires thinking several moves ahead." The cubs exchanged glances that seemed to communicate volumes. Elena had been on Cathara Prime for 6 months now, working to establish formal diplomatic relations between humanity and the apex predator species that ruled this sector of space. The Cathara were formidable warriors, their society built around complex hunting strategies and pack hierarchies. Adults stood over 8 feet tall, possessed reflexes that could track a hummingbird's flight, and had conquered 17 star systems through sheer tactical brilliance. But it was their cubs that fascinated Elena most. "Show us more human war games," demanded Silnith, a smaller cub with distinctive silver markings along her spine. "Our tutors teach us only Cathara battle forms. We hunger for new strategies." Over the next several hours, Elena introduced them to chess, checkers, Go, and even basic military tactical simulations she had clearance to share. The cubs absorbed everything with frightening speed, their predatory minds dissecting each game's underlying principles in minutes. They asked probing questions about flanking maneuvers, resource management, and psychological warfare that made Elena's diplomatic training seem inadequate. "Humans think differently than Cathara," observed Torvek, the quietest of the group. "You assume your opponent will act logically. We assume they will act optimally for survival. Interesting." As the day wore on, more cubs joined the impromptu lesson. Soon Elena found herself surrounded by nearly 24 young Cathara, all eager to master these new hunting patterns, as they called them. She taught them about bluffing in poker, the importance of logistics in war, and how humans had historically won battles through unconventional tactics rather than brute force. "Your species is small and weak," noted Zektar, though he said it without malice, simply stating an observed fact. "Yet you survived to reach the stars. This suggests your strategies compensate for physical limitations." Elena nodded. "We had to be clever. When you're not the biggest predator, you learn to think like prey, and sometimes prey finds ways to turn the tables." The cub's eyes literally lit up at that statement. A bioluminescent response Elena had learned indicated extreme interest, or excitement. The next morning, Elena was awakened by her aide, David Park, who looked equal parts amazed and concerned. "Ambassador, you need to see this," he said, leading her to the observation deck overlooking the Cathara training grounds. Below them, the cubs had arranged themselves into 2 opposing forces, with adult Cathara warriors serving as opposing commanders. But instead of the traditional ceremonial combat Elena had witnessed before, the cubs were implementing recognizably human tactical concepts. They used terrain for concealment, created diversions to mask their true objectives, and coordinated attacks from multiple angles simultaneously. "They're using chess knight movements," David whispered in amazement. "Look, that group is L-shaped flanking maneuvers, just like you taught them." But it was more than that. The cubs had somehow internalized the psychological elements of human warfare. They feinted attacks to draw opponents out of position, used their smaller size as an advantage rather than a disadvantage, and most remarkably, they were winning. Elder Huntmaster Vex Thule, the Cubs' primary military instructor, approached Elena with what she had learned to recognize as deep respect in his posture. "Ambassador Vasquez," he rumbled in his bass voice, "what did you teach our young ones yesterday?" Elena watched as a team of cubs successfully surrounded and captured 3 adult warriors using a modified version of the pincer movement she had demonstrated with chess pieces. "I taught them games, Huntmaster. Human games." "Games," Vex Thule repeated, his mandibles clicking in what Elena hoped was amusement rather than anger. "Our cubs have just defeated seasoned warriors using tactics none of us have seen before. In one day, you have given them strategic concepts that took our military academies centuries to develop." On the training ground below, young Silnith stood over a defeated adult warrior twice her size, having used a combination of Go territory control and poker bluffing to outmaneuver her opponent completely. "Perhaps," Vex Thule continued, studying Elena with new appreciation, "we have underestimated what your small and weak species brings to galactic civilization. Our cubs learned your games in hours and surpassed their instructors by dawn. Imagine what they could accomplish with years of human tactical education." Elena smiled, watching the cubs celebrate their victories with the unbridled joy of young predators who had just discovered they were even more dangerous than they had previously imagined. "Huntmaster," she said, "I think this is the beginning of a very interesting alliance." Below them, Zektar looked up at the observation deck and gave what Elena could only describe as a predatory grin. In his eyes, she saw the future of Kithara-human cooperation, a generation of young warriors who combined the physical prowess of apex predators with the cunning, strategic mind of humanity's greatest survivors. The galaxy, she realized, was about to become a much more interesting place.